Hi, folks. Welcome to the next edition of Serverless Craic. With myself, Dave Anderson. I'm Technical Fellow at Bizarre Voice and author and contributor at the Serverless Age.
Mark McCann, Architect at Globalization Partners and contributor and author at the Serverless Edge.
And Michael O'Reilly, a software architect with Globalization Partners, contributor to Serverless Edge and aspiring astronaut today. You see my background.
More like spaceman, I think.
Space cadet.
Space cadet.
Yeah.
So this is the sixth and final piece of our Modern Cloud series. We started back in episode 15, talking about Modern Cloud. And we give an intro at the start, and then we just went through 4 personas. I think it was the CEO, product leader, developer, and architect. So I thought it might be interesting to just recap and close out on that, because I think it was nice going through it. I think it's interesting thinking of the Modern Cloud from the different personas. Obviously, as technical people, we'll go straight to the services and products and techniques, which we think are great. But the thing you forget, I think, about cloud and what it means is it has to represent value for different personas across the business. The customer is an obvious one, but I think it's good to talk about internal stakeholders.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting discussion. I thought the CEO and product personas were very interesting. I think we were fairly happy in the developer and architect. That's where we live.
Yeah.
But it was interesting on the CEO and product personas.
Yeah, I think just even focusing on, like, as Wardley Mapping sort of tells us or guides us to, who are our users and what are their needs, and even just having those conversations and distilling that down, it really helped us, I guess, in our thinking, and even just trying to articulate, what are the benefits of this? What are the sort of the good approaches that we can bring to bear to get that time to value, to realize the potential of proper modern sort of cloud ecosystems. So yeah, I think it's been a useful series even for ourselves to talk this through and sort of clarify our own sort of mental model of what modern cloud is and what it can be, and what benefits teams and organizations that sort of follow this path can get out of it, right? And I think it just reinforced the this has been democratized globally, and if you do pursue this properly, you can compete with anybody anywhere in the world, from very small sort of outlay, right?
And there's something about, I know, like when we started talking about cloud, we can build a ephemeral event-driven architecture and it'll be great and it'll be brilliant. And then the CEO was thinking, can you be faster and cheaper?
Yeah.
It's a very simple value proposition. So I think remember some of those things is important, because you need to keep that commercial lens on as we design our applications, as we design our processes, and as we build up our teams.
Yeah.
One thing I think is interesting that I found, we've been talking about this for a long time, is the whole serverless term. I mean, we'd done a lot of work around serverless first, and I still think that's a really strong strategy. It's very powerful. But the serverless term itself, it's one of the reasons why we use the term modern cloud, because serverless is quite it's turned into a religious war. A lot of people, when they hear serverless, they think of Lambda, and it's much more than that.
Yeah, I think it's Lambda was the great first go-to for a lot of the sort of ephemeral sort of event-driven function-based sort of workloads, and it's been fantastic. But as the ecosystem has evolved, your more managed services are available to us now. Direct integration between those managed services is available. You don't need as much glue, right? So again, that operational burden, that code liability, you don't need to worry about anymore. You can sort of offload that to the cloud provider and to the services. So I think serverless, the term, it's probably coming to a close, I guess, as a useful sort of vehicle for what this thing was that emerged. I think it's gone through an evolutionary journey now, and I think modern cloud supplants it as a term.
I think like that's what I was going to say, is like the modern cloud for me is like, in the context of serverless exists within the IT org.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when we're thinking about like approaches to solutioning for something, you can go with a container, or we can go on the Lambda, and as Mark, you saying, it's expanded, and obviously the industry's been kind of having that debate and kind of rolling out on serverless now for, must be close to must be approaching 10 years soon enough, but it's getting there. But like it stops becoming an argument over serverless and versus containers or whatever, and you start, I think, in modern cloud, because you are kind of having to work across product and business, that you should really start talking in the language of capabilities, and you kind of do develop like a ubiquitous language around those building blocks. Like we got to get a capability out to production, and really it doesn't matter what's for us. We know modern cloud is, we've all these sort of abilities under the hood, but really we're having to evolve more to talk in business terms, and just kind of really just put capabilities over the top and stop talking about Lambda versus cubes or whatever.
I think the well-architected sort of approach helps frame it as well. Is it secure? Is it operationally excellent? Is it performant? Is it reliable? Is it cost optimized? Is it sustainable? Those capabilities, those conversations are sort of supplanting sort of the, hey, are you using serverless or not?
Well, that's the huge big paradigm shift that you don't really hear people talk an awful lot about, but teams that are kind of working on a modern cloud approach, that term we talk about, it's in the flywheel, long-term value, and we talk about well architected. Like, because we defer a lot of the ops and a lot of the sort of the maintenance and things to the cloud, our solutions are getting more cost effective with us doing nothing. They're getting more secure and more robust and more performant with us doing nothing. Whereas teams aren't operating on that sort of that way, or the opposite. You don't hear an awful lot about that, which is a massive benefit to any org.
I think. Yeah, I think there's a mindset change. I remember the penny dropped for me years ago, and it's actually, a lot of people think that Lambda was the first serverless service, and it was actually S3 storage, like what, 2003 or 2000, like way before that. And I think that for me the difference was there was when people started using S3, there was a change in mindset. What I blew my mind was the chaining or eventing of things. You didn't think of it as a call stack where you rigidly go down a stack and back up again, because you always put that in as a sort of a false constraint back in the early days. But now you could actually say, if this, then do that, and trigger different things, which is a complete different way of thinking. And for me, that modern cloud is a way of thinking in that way, where things trigger other things. So you have a different, it's a different abstraction layer. I think for me, there's a different mindset. But another thing we started using, been asking people about, is modern cloud versus legacy cloud. And for me, legacy cloud is that traditional call stack in the cloud. We've got a whole bunch of stuff that's rigidly calling over. It's going to be running hot all the time, and it's just pumping along. And it's really just stuff that should be in your data center that's now in the cloud. So I find that's a very interesting question to ask people about legacy cloud versus modern cloud. And it's quite a challenging question, but a lot of people, when they look back at their traditional kind of stack sitting there, they go, oh, well, that's actually it's a legacy monolith in the cloud.
Yeah, you have none of the advantages of loose coupling, you have none of elasticity advantages, you have none of the global scaling advantages, you have none of the space for innovation with new capabilities coming out. It's very hard to adopt any of those features from a modern cloud.
But that's okay as well, because a lot of people think transformation ends with the move into the cloud. Often transformation starts with moving. So legacy cloud is where you need to start.
Yep.
Then you need to measure and actually start modernizing. So a lot of people miss that out.
Yep.
And I think that's an important phase, and it's probably, you could probably devote a whole episode to that, because I think there's definitely a period of time and adjustment to moving from that mindset into an organization that can embrace all we're talking about here with regards modern cloud. Like there's a certain way you have to organize yourself within the cloud to kind of operate that way, and it does take time, and there's a certain it's like anything, it'll be slow to begin with, but as you progress, the momentum can kind of build, and before you know it, you're up and running again. It's another flywheel effect. But certainly I've experienced it obviously in a couple of orgs now, where you're we're kind of going through that process, but you can already see it starting to pick up, and and it's definitely over the longer term, it makes complete sense.
Yeah, I think that evolution from you've migrated to the cloud, and then you got to keep evolving, and the techniques we bring to bear on that, the Wardley Mapping techniques that really help identify what needs to continue to evolve toward being much more of a commodity. Because what we've seen in the past is people move in, they think they're in the cloud now, we'll stop innovating, we'll stop evolving, we'll stop leveraging new capabilities, and then you're left behind. Your flywheel's not turning anymore, you're just stopped, right? You're not evolving to the future.
And that balance between those two things is so important. The fact is that you've made the move into the cloud, so your technical strategy is starting to kind of evolve forward. And now you need to start thinking about your business strategy and what's required of you from the business. So that interaction from the two of those things is absolutely, I mean, that is our flywheel effect that we talk about in the book, is that idea of purpose. Do you know what you're doing? Are you very clear what that is? Do you have your North Star? Challenge, do you have the right environment and capability to do what you need to do? Next best action, do you have that good developer experience and potentially that serverless first approach where you can offload work to the provider, and then long-term value where you're bringing in well-architected and sustainability, and then you're up way again with purpose. So I mean that's what the book's about, the flywheel effect. So you can order it now on all good booksellers. But I think for me, if you haven't embraced those modern cloud concepts, you're going to get that investment to move to the cloud. But then when the business come along and say, okay, now we need more things, you're like, oh, hang on, we're still trying to fix this old thing up. That's where you're going to get the blocker. And you may get a very frustrated business stakeholder that they've spent all this money to move to this new thing, but they can't get the things that you promised. You're maybe not as fast as you need to be. You're not as cheap, and you maybe can't do as many new things as you promised. So it's a funny thing.
Yeah, it's keeping that time to value low sustainably now and into the future, and being responsive to the needs of the business. And I think even right back to the start of this episode, we talked about the users and their needs and the different personas. If you can't meet those needs, they're going to find somebody who can, or they're going to find a provider who can meet those needs.
Yeah. It's that old kind of sort of Chinese proverb, isn't it? The best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The next best time to do it is now. Like, I think that when you kind of make that switch, it is difficult, it is hard, and know where to start. But even I would even argue that transition from legacy cloud to modern cloud is an iterative one, where you kind of start on like smaller type workloads or small operation, and then you kind of build on it. You expand it up. You might start off on a single account, but over a period of maybe a year, couple of years, your multi-account strategy, you've kind of embraced that whole concept. You're in there. You've got like processes for you've developed out all your capabilities. Your developer experience is frictionless. You're kind of down a route where you can kind of react to business demand and need much more quicker or rapidly than you could have done in the past. And then even developer happiness, developer kind of recruitment, all those sorts of things, engineering, even product end, business end, everyone's kind of it's a much better situation you kind of find yourself in.
I think we're all, especially with the pandemic, people are searching for more purpose, a more meaningful job, a more meaningful existence. And if you have leveraged all the sort of things that we've talked about in the previous couple of episodes, and if you've positioned yourself in modern cloud, it will be a happier, more meaningful place to work, because you are focused on those users, their needs, and you have a good purpose that's well articulated.
I think that's to be said as well, just on that point. It's like, people will know, what good is, and good is, it's starting to kind of permeate the industry, and it's starting to become a differentiator now for people looking to their next career, or so
there you have it. Modern cloud, no time like the present. Go out today, plant your tree, sort out your developer experience. It's there to be had, no excuses. So that's the crack. That was our conversation on modern cloud. I think that was a good one. I enjoyed that. So please have a look at the blog on the serverlessage.com, and we're on Twitter at serverlessage, plus YouTube and LinkedIn. And the book, The Flywheel Effect, is available now for pre-order. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.